Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name's Elena Campbell. I'm president of the Rochester Regional Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to our webinar, PPP, EIDL, we all know what those mean now, right? And SBA Resources for Small Biz. I wanted to let you know that this event is brought to you by the Oakland Chamber Network. So for those of you who maybe don't know, the Oakland Chamber Network consists of all 27 chambers that are here in Oakland County. The executives, directors, and staff from those 27 chambers typically meet. I say typically because things have changed over the last year a little bit, but typically we meet once a quarter to collaborate, share ideas, and talk about how we can work together to serve you, our businesses here in Oakland County. So I wanted to introduce our current leadership team who we have on the call with us today. Our secretary is Tara Tomczyk with the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Our treasurer, who couldn't join us today, but is Richard McKinnon. He's with the Holly Chamber of Commerce. Our vice president is Sean Hayes with the Clarkston Chamber of Commerce. And I'm currently serving as the president until I get out of it. No, just kidding. Marie Hosworth, I see you laughing. Marie's with the Waterford Chamber. She's been very involved in the Oakland Chamber Network as well. Which brings me to, I did want to recognize some of our other executives from other chambers in the county that we have on the call. We have Sarah and Sanat from the Chaldean Chamber, Damini Head from the Pontiac Chamber. As I said, Marie Hosworth with the Waterford Chamber, Joel Beether with the Huron Valley Chamber, Jean Jernigan with the Auburn Hills Chamber, Duke Abrahamson with the Asian Pacific American Chamber, Noelle Champagne with the Orion Area Chamber, Roseanne with the Berkeley Chamber, and Farah Shama. I can never say your last name. I'm so sorry, Farah.
It's Shamami.
Shamami with the Novi Chamber of Commerce. So together we feel like, of course, we are all stronger. And as I've been saying over the past year, together is how we're going to get through these unprecedented times. And together is how we help you, all of our businesses as well, get through these unprecedented times. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today. And just kudos to them. We all know how quickly, even daily in the beginning, information was changing. And the folks at the SBA offices here at the local level and all the way up to the national level have worked so incredibly hard, taking legislation, that was passed in Congress and signed into law and pivoting it on a dime, literally, to get dollars out to our businesses quicker than we've ever seen a federal government agency move. And it's just huge props and kudos to everyone at all of the SBA offices for everything that they've done to do that for our business community. We really, really appreciate it. And we're going to hear today from Catherine Gase, who's the lead economic development specialist here locally in the Detroit office. And Catherine, I have to give a huge shout out to you. She was my go-to person. Every time I had a business call me with a question that I couldn't answer, and most of them I couldn't answer, I have to admit. I tried to keep up as best I could. But Catherine was my go-to person, and she always answered the phone. She always answered my emails. And I just have appreciated her tremendously over the last year. And then Brian Picarazzi, who is a senior area manager with the SBA. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you so much, Elena. This is Catherine Gase. Thank you, everyone, for joining our call today. And Elena, thank you for hosting in the Oakland Chamber Network. We're really appreciative. Kudos to you, Elena. You've been a terrific resource for small businesses in your community, and it's just our pleasure to work with you. The majority of our presentation today is going to be done by my friend and colleague, Brian Picarazzi. Brian is somewhat of an expert on everything PPP and EIDL and debt relief, and so we are going to share with you a PowerPoint presentation that has been sanctioned by our headquarters, and we're trying to get information out as quickly as possible. But we want to do it right the first time. So there was just a small delay in getting information in terms of a PowerPoint. We were kind of winging this last week, going onto our website, but now we actually have a PowerPoint. However, Brian is going to supplement this presentation with some additional information from the legislation. So we'll talk about some additional programs like our debt relief program that can be really helpful to people that either have existing SBA loans or are looking for new money. We'll talk a little bit about the intersection of PPP and EIDL. And then of course, we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. So I imagine there's a chat box, correct, Elena?
Yes.
Yep, so we encourage you to ask questions, and then we'll look at those and pose those questions at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to share with you now just some SBA consulting resources that we have available in Michigan and certainly in Oakland County. Starting with the SBA District Office, we're all working virtually. Brian is in the Grand Rapids satellite office and serves all of West Michigan, but during COVID, he has just been a fantastic resource to our district office, presenting these webinars. Brian and I do sometimes several a day, every day. So you can always contact us at sba.gov, sba.gov/MI. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have listed an email address, but let me give it to you now. It's Michigan, spelled out, Michigan at sba.gov. Michigan@sba.gov. Feel free to ask any questions. We monitor that many times a day and sort of farm those out to our employees, our staff. We're, I think, 7 now. We're down to 7 people. So we serve the whole state, and we are still doing our government contracting work and our public affairs work. And obviously, we're working really closely with our lending partners. So we will make sure that your email gets answered. Again, it's michigan@sba.gov. I'll just quickly go through 4 resource partners that SBA funds on a national level. And here in Michigan, we have first the Small Business Development Center Network, or SBDC, Small Business Development Center. We have 11 regional offices throughout the state. They are providing all types of business consulting, whether it's starting or growing a business and certainly recovering from this pandemic. They can be reached at SBDC, again, small boy, dog, cat, SBDC Michigan, spelled out, .org. And I'll make this PowerPoint available to Elena if you want to give it out to the participants on the call. The easiest way to get in touch with the Small Business Development Center, if you want a request for counseling, is just to log onto their website, click request for counseling, and an intake consultant will get back with you. I might add that through the CARES Act that was passed back in April, significant funding went to all of our resource partners for additional expertise. They were able to hire consultants and actual service providers who are experts in their field. And through the federal funding, we are able to pay for those consultants and service providers to directly provide services to small businesses. So, whether you are looking for a HR specialist or a CPA or someone to help you with record keeping for forgiveness, or you're looking to pivot from brick and mortar to more of an e-commerce platform, if you're looking for help in putting together a new QuickBooks plan, our consultancies throughout these resources can help you do that. So that's one of the benefits of the CARES Act funding. So I just encourage you to reach out to them. For the female business owners, we have 3 SBA funded women's business centers. These are organizations, again, that have been funded just prior to COVID for a long time, and will survive and continue to be a resource for you long after COVID. And let's hope that comes soon. We have one in Livonia that serves Southeast Michigan. If anyone is on the phone from different parts of the state, we have a presence in West Michigan and Southwest Michigan as well. In Southeast Michigan, the Great Lakes Women's Business Council, or Great Lakes WBC.org, is a fantastic organization that is doing all kinds of special webinars and providing resources for women business owners throughout the pandemic. And, you know, of course, certainly in more normal times as well. SCORE is just a wonderful organization of retired men and women who have volunteered their time to give back to their community. These are mostly retired men and women who have been in just about any facet of industry or business, or who have owned their own business. Some of them are still currently working and active in their business or active in industry, but they have decided to give back to the communities that they serve, and are providing mentoring and consulting to business owners throughout the state. We have 7 chapters. All of them are just exceptional. These are dedicated, devoted men and women who get paid nothing for their services, and yet they want to help you throughout this time. They'll be here long after COVID is gone. They like to say that they're mentors for the life of your business, and please take advantage of them. They're just exceptional people. Again, we have 7 chapters. They're all listed here. And then finally, we are really fortunate here in Michigan to have one of the most outstanding veterans business outreach centers in the country, called Vet Biz Central. And just a number of years ago, Vet Biz Central was awarded the SBA National Veterans Business Outreach Center of the Year. So of all of our Veterans Business Outreach Centers, Vet Biz Central was the number one resource for veterans through the SBA family. Give them a call, email them. Again, all of our resource partners are operating virtually. The nice thing about the Vet Biz Central and the Veterans Business Outreach Center is that they are staffed by veterans, and they're dedicated to serving. I think we need to put someone on mute. I'm not sure who it is. Getting some feedback. So again, we'll make this available to you and to Elena. However, it's easiest to get this information to you, Elena. We'll work afterwards to make sure that people have all the necessary information. With that, I'd like to introduce again my friend and colleague, Brian Picarazzi, who's our Senior Area Manager in Grand Rapids. And Brian will take you through the relaunch of the Paycheck Protection Program, talk a little bit about debt relief and EIDL. So Brian?
Okay, thanks, Kathy. All right, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about our, obviously, PPP program, the relaunch of the new CARES Act legislation. The information you're going to see today is updated as of January 14th. So not a lot has changed since then, but there may have been some things. Things are often changing, little things changing daily. So updated as of January 14th. And then, as Kathy said, we're going to talk a little bit about EIDL, some of the additional enhancements to this package, and we'll obviously get into PPP first draw and second draw. So we'll talk about where we are, some key dates. We'll talk about our first draw PPP loans, our second draw PPP loans. We'll give a quick forgiveness update, and then some additional resources and what you do now. So in this round of the CARES Act, Congress intended this round of PPP to increase access to COVID relief, funding for the hardest hit small businesses and those in underserved segments, including women, minorities, and veterans. In response, the SBA is initially opening PPP loan applications to submissions from CFIs, which serve underserved communities. We're also doing a better job of leveraging our lender match platform so that borrowers can find participating PPP lenders if they don't already have one online. If you go to our website, sba.gov/PPP, it'll be one of the first things you see on the page will be to locate a lender. So if you don't have a lender that you are planning to work with, You can plug your information in there, and it'll shoot your information out to participating lenders in your area who will contact you about applications. We'll keep doing these trainings and provide material and assistance for as long as we have to. So we will be here after this if you have questions until this whole deal is over with. Okay, so first we'll start with some key dates. I think probably everybody's aware by now, but this first round opened on January 11th for first draw to CFIs, community financial institutions. We designate a CFI to be a community development financial institution, or a CDFI, a minority deposit institution, a certified development company, or a micro lender. We're kind of past that stage now. That was initially open to those groups for the first 3 days. They got a bit of a head start compared to regular conventional lenders. So at this point, it was 3 days of CFI. You can still submit through a CFI if you'd like to, but their exclusive window is now closed. And then as of last Friday, we opened it up to the portal to institutions that were $1 billion or less in assets. They were able to take applications kind of a couple days before everyone else, and then as of Tuesday of this week, we've opened it up to all institutions across the board that are taking PPP applications. This program will exhaust or be done March 31st or until the appropriations run out. So we'll talk a little bit about our first draw PPP loan. The first draw is for eligible applicants that did not receive PPP loans prior to August 9th, 2020. PPP loan eligibility now includes some additional types of entities. The covered eligible expenses have been expanded, and we'll talk about those here real quick at the end of this slide. Some of the other changes, if you're familiar with the first round, if you did take money the first round, you kind of had a choice between either an 8-week or a 24-week covered period. This legislation allows a little more flexibility, and you can choose any covered period between 8 and 24 weeks, whatever number. So if you wanted a 16-week or 18-week or 12-week or whatever the case may be, whatever works for your business, you're able to choose your own covered period. Certain borrowers on this round can request an increase to their original PPP loan amount. So existing borrowers that did not receive loan forgiveness by December 27th, 2020 can reapply for a first draw PPP loan if they previously returned some or all of their first draw PPP loan funds. So if you got your loan money and weren't able to use it all in your covered period and you returned some to your lending institution, you'd be eligible to apply under this first draw for the difference of basically the amount that you sent back the first time around. Or under certain circumstances, you can request to modify your first draw PPP loan amount if you previously did not accept the full amount for which you were eligible. So I know an example of that, we had we had some cases the first time around where businesses, especially in the beginning when things were kind of flying fast and furious there, some businesses applied, but they didn't put the full amount they were eligible for down. They did the calculation wrong, or whatever the case may be. If that's the case, if you got less than you were eligible for, you'd also be able to apply under this first draw kind of tag. So those are the two scenarios where if you got PPP the first time around, you'd be eligible to apply under this first draw. So some of those eligible expenses we'll talk about real quick. So the covered eligible expenses were expanded under this CARES Act legislation. So additional eligible covered expenses would be covered operations expenditures. So payments for any software, cloud computing, or other human resources or accounting needs would now be considered an eligible expense that was not considered an eligible expense the first time around. Covered property damage costs, so costs related to property damage due to any public disturbance that occurred during 2020 that wasn't covered by your insurance, would now be a covered and eligible expense. Covered supplier costs, and our restaurants may be interested in this, but expenditures to a supplier pursuant to a contract, purchase order, or order for goods in effect prior to taking out the loan that are essential to the recipient's operations at the time at which the expenditure was made. Supplier costs of perishable goods can be made before or during the life of the loan. So those covered supplier costs would now be an additional eligible expense. And then the last one would be covered worker protection expenditures. So any PPE equipment or adaptive investments to help a loan recipient comply with federal health and safety guidelines, or any equivalent state and local guidance related to COVID-19 during the period March 1 and the end of the national declaration, emergency declaration, would also be a covered expense. So for like a restaurant, if you have to spin up some outdoor seating because you can't have indoor seating, so if you're looking to prop up an outdoor area, that would be an example of an additional covered expense. So in addition to those covered expenses, the legislation also says that it allows for loans made under PPP before, on, or after the enactment of this act to be eligible to utilize the expanded forgivable expenses, except for borrowers who have already had their loans forgiven. So what that means is these additional covered expenses, they weren't eligible the first time around. So if you got PPP the first time around and you may have used some of that money on these expenses that were not eligible then but are eligible now, they're retroactively eligible for you to apply for forgiveness on your first batch of PPP money, unless you have already had your loan forgiven, and then it's not eligible at that point. But if you haven't had your loan forgiveness granted yet, those eligible costs would be retroactive. Okay, so a little more on first draw PPP loan eligibility. You've got to comply with size standards, eligibility criteria. There's certain limitations. So newly eligible, so these were not eligible the first time around but are eligible now. Housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations, certain 501c6 organizations like Chambers of Commerce, and then there are some eligible news organizations who now would be eligible. Still eligible, and who were eligible the first time around: business entities, partnerships, corporations, LLCs, sole props, independent contractors, self-employed individuals, 501c3 nonprofits, 501c19 veterans organizations, and tribal businesses. So any of the above are now eligible for this round. So we'll talk a little bit here about the second draw PPP loan. So obviously, just to recap, we went over the first draw. First draw mainly is if you did not get PPP the first time around. We talked about those two scenarios where if you did get PPP the first time around, you would still be eligible for first draw PPP, but primarily that first draw is going to be for folks who did not get PPP the first time around. So then we also have a second draw PPP loan. So the second draw is for borrowers that previously received a PPP loan, have 300 employees or less, and suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. So the one thing we don't have on this PowerPoint, for the second draw, as you can see, there's a 300 employee or less threshold to be eligible. For the first draw, it's a 500 employee or less threshold to be eligible. The second draw is a little more targeted than the original PPP or the first draw. So for most borrowers, the maximum loan amount of a second draw is 2.5 times their average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. So to be clear on that, you can choose to use either your 2019 payroll for your calculation, or you can use your 2020 payroll for calculation. You have the option. You can choose either one. Both are up to $2 million, both first draw and second draw. For borrowers that are in the accommodation and food services sectors, who everybody would kind of agree have been some of our hardest hit, or NICS code, if your NICS code starts with 72, the maximum loan amount for a second draw PPP loan is 3.5 times the average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. So for most borrowers, 2.5 times, same as first time around. But if you are in your restaurant, hotel, accommodation, and food services sector, you are eligible to go 3.5 times your average monthly payroll when you make your calculations. Second draw loan applicants must submit the information on the application, SBA Form 2483 SD, and you would apply through a lender. We don't do any of the direct lending, just like the first time around. So that application is on our website. You'll be able to find it there, fill it out, submit it to your lender. So a little bit about the 25% reduction. So you must have previously received a first draw PPP loan, right, to be eligible for the second. You have to have used or will use the full first draw PPP loan amount only for eligible expenses before the PPP second draw loan is dispersed. So if you did get your first round PPP and for some reason you used it on expenses that were not eligible, you would not be eligible for the second draw. As long as you use it on eligible expenses, you're eligible to take the second draw. Again, no more than 300 employees and can demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. So just a little bit about that. What you can do is you can compare your first quarter of 2020 to your first quarter of 2019 to get that 25% reduction or to show it. You can compare second quarter 2020 to second quarter 2019, so on and so forth, third quarter to third quarter. What you can't do is compare first quarter of 2020 to fourth quarter of 2019. You can't do that. So it's got to be an apples to apples comparison to find that 25% quarterly reduction. You also could just do a year over year. If you had a full-on 25% annual reduction, you can compare full year 2020 to full year 2019 to show that reduction. So you can do it quarterly, you can do it annually, whichever way you choose. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about forgiveness. Borrowers must apply for forgiveness through their lender. The lenders will submit borrower forgiveness decisions to the SBA. So there's been a couple updates to the Act as it relates to forgiveness. One of the big ones is we're no longer taking idle advances and deducting them from your forgiveness payment. So the first time around, if you received a PPP loan for $50,000 and you received an idle fast grant, that was the money that was $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. So if you received, say you received $10,000 through the idle fast grant previously and a $50,000 PPP loan, under the old legislation, we had to deduct that $10,000 in grant money from your PPP money, so your maximum forgivable amount would have only been $40,000. That has changed with this legislation. We're no longer requiring that to be deducted. So there's a couple scenarios here. If you got first round PPP and you haven't applied or been granted forgiveness yet, you don't have to worry about it, because when you go to apply, it's not going to be deducted and you don't really have to worry about anything. If you took first round PPP money and you've applied for forgiveness and your forgiveness has been granted and we have already deducted that idle fast grant money, what's going to happen is the SBA is going to make reconciliation payments back to your lender. So we would send back that $10,000 or whatever dollar amount you got through the idle grant, and the lender would either apply it to your existing, if you have an existing loan balance on that PPP, they would apply it to that, or they would return the cash to you. But it's going to be incumbent upon the lender to disperse those funds back to you. But that money will be coming back. So just a quick recap: if you haven't applied for forgiveness, or if maybe you have applied but you haven't had it granted yet, you don't have to worry about it. If you have had your first round forgiven and they deducted that idle money, just stay in contact with your lender, because we're going to be sending that money back to the lender, and then they're going to disperse it back to you, either apply it to the loan balance or get you the cash back. Another big change is forgiven PPP loans are not taxable income. Expenses paid with PPP loan funds are now tax deductible. Obviously, you're going to want to talk to your accountant or your financial advisor about how that will apply to you, but just know that the PPP loans are not taxable income, and the expenses paid with the PPP loan funds are now tax deductible. We've had some expanded forgivable expenses. They're permissible for any PPP loan not already forgiven. Those are the additional covered eligible expenses we kind of talked about earlier. And then this says coming soon, the simplified forgiveness application for PPP loans, $150,000 or under. That forgiveness application has been released. It's on our website. So that's a one-page forgiveness application that is now available and can be submitted to your lenders whenever you're ready to submit for forgiveness. Okay, we're going to kind of go off script a little bit here. I want to talk about some quick updates to the extension of the debt relief program. If you have an existing regular SBA loan, so if you have a 7A loan, a 504 loan, an express loan, if you already had an SBA loan, you know that the original CARES Act called for 6 months of principal and interest payments to be made on your SBA loans by the SBA. So we made a complete 6 months worth of payments on those loans if you have an existing SBA loan the first time around. So that program has been written into the new legislation. It has changed a little bit. So it will resume the payment of principal and interest on small business loans guaranteed by the SBA under the 7A, 504, and microloans programs. All borrowers with qualifying loans approved by the SBA prior to the CARES Act will receive an additional 3 months of principal and interest payments starting February 2021. But they will be capped at $9,000 per borrower per month. So the first time around, you got 6 months of payments with no cap. This time around, you're going to get 3 months of payments, but it will be capped at $9,000 per borrower per month. After that 3-month period, borrowers that we consider to be underserved, namely the smallest or the hardest hit by the pandemic, they're going to receive an additional 5 months of principal and interest payments, also capped at that $9,000 per borrower per month. So that's going to be anybody with an SBA microloan, a community advantage loan, a 7A loan, a 504 loan, but it's going to be in the hardest hit sectors, and we're going to measure that by severity of sector-wide job losses since the start of the pandemic. So typically that's going to be food service and accommodation, arts, entertainment and recreation, education, and then laundry and personal care services. So if you fall within those sectors, you're going to get an additional 5 months of P&I payments made if you have an existing SBA loan. Additionally, we're going to make 6 months of P&I payments on newly approved SBA loans if it's approved between February 1st and September 30th, 2021, and it's also going to be capped at $9,000 per month. So if you don't have an SBA loan now, but you're outside of PPP and EIDL, those two programs are not included in this. But if you're looking to access capital and you're looking to use maybe our SBA programs, if you do get an SBA loan between Feb 1 and September 30th, we're going to make 6 months of P&I payments on that, and it's going to be capped at $9,000 per month per borrower. We've made some modifications to our regular SBA lending programs. So we kind of have two flagship programs outside of PPP and EIDL, just our regular everyday loan programs that run through banks, our 7A and our 504 program. Our 7A program is kind of like an all-purpose loan. Typically, we'll have a 75% guarantee to the bank. So, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but essentially if you get a $100,000 SBA loan from the bank, if it were to be defaulted on for whatever reason, the bank is going to we have a 75% guarantee back to the bank. So they're going to recoup 75% of their losses in the event of liquidation. And that's just our normal everyday program. That allows for banks to get money out on the street that they couldn't do conventionally because they'll use our program and have this guarantee. So with the new CARES Act legislation, we're increasing that guarantee from 75% to 90%. So the bank's going to get a 90% guarantee on our SBA loan programs until October 1st. So that's going to help them or make it even more easier for them to lend money to businesses during the pandemic. We also have an express loan that typically is a $350,000 max. Also, this also goes through the bank. All of our programs you apply through the bank. We're not a direct lender. So typically it's a $350,000 max. we kind of use that for our revolving line of credit. You can use it for more, but typically it's our best vehicle for a revolving line. So it's a $350,000 max typically, and it has a 50% guarantee to the bank typically. This legislation increases that to $1 million max and provides a 75% guarantee to the bank. So again, we're increasing the amount available to $1 million, increasing the guarantee fee to their percentage to the bank. So hopefully it's going to make it easier for them to use our programs to lend back out to business, especially businesses that have been hurt, obviously, by the pandemic. So with that, real quick, we also have waived all our lender and borrower fees for both the 7A and 504 programs with this legislation. So higher guarantee percentages, higher loan amounts, and no fees per this legislation. So if you're looking to access money outside of PPP or EIDL, it's really a good opportunity to look at our programs and maybe see if one of them is a fit for you. I'm going to briefly talk about our EIDL loan program. I think by now probably everybody's aware of it, or at least has heard of it and knows what it's all about, but just in case, our EIDL, our EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, is still available. You can still apply for it. It's a max loan amount of $150,000. It carries a 3.75% interest rate and a 30-year term, and it's a 2.75% interest rate in a 30-year term for nonprofit businesses. So that program is still available. You can still apply for it. You don't have to make payments on that for 12 months. So, if you're on the fence about it, you could always apply, get the money, and then if you want to return it within that 12-month period, you won't have to make any payments on it. So you'd have to pay a little accrued interest, but you'd have the money available for a year to kind of figure out what's going on. So those programs are available. You can apply for them on our website, sba.gov/PPP. You'll see a section there about EIDL. You apply right online. That's a direct lend program from us. It's different from PPP in that the PPP is forgivable if you use it correctly. The EIDL is an actual loan, so you'll make payments on it. It's a regular loan. We'll probably have some questions about the EIDL advance or that FAST grant money that was available for some part of the first round. It ran out there, I think, in July or August, but we're not sure. We're fairly certain that program's coming back. We're not sure how it's going to be implemented. So we'll get more information on that as we get it. There's a big backlog of people who applied for an EIDL loan who would have been eligible for that grant money if it hadn't run out when it did. So, I think what we're hearing is they're going to maybe fulfill some of those commitments first and see what kind of money's left to look at FAST grants for current applicants. So that's all we know about it, but as we get more information, we'll certainly get it out. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
This is Kathy. I just want to remind everyone that we are doing these webinars several times a week. And so if you want to join us in future events, please go to our website, sba.gov, and sign up look under local assistance or updates for either our resource partners or to sign up for updates. You'll get a bulletin about once a week, maybe a little bit more often, with all of our webinars as well as our funded resource partners. We try to put everything up there, both on our calendar and send it out in our bulletins as well. So, Elena, do you want me to monitor the chat box and ask the questions?
Sure, Kathy, I think that's a good idea because you're going to be better at not asking duplicates. And
all right. Let's see. Will you share the PowerPoint to everyone? Yes. Elena, do you want to address that? How's the best way for people to get the PowerPoint?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll send out the recording along with the PowerPoint to all of the chamber executives. So we have a great list of all of the leaders at each chamber. We'll send it to them and then they can filter it into their newsletters and onto their websites.
Fantastic. And I appreciate, Elena, you or your staff added our michigan@sba.gov email address and sbdcmichigan.org. There's also SCORE, our Women's Business Center, and our Vet Biz Central. So all of those are going to be on the PowerPoint. Where do we again go to find our local lender? So I have this slide up here. It's sba.gov/lender match. sba.gov/lender match. That'll help you identify which lenders are doing PPP and are interested. I know the first time around we had some challenges with lenders that were only participating in the PPP program for their existing customers. We did have some fintech companies that were doing PPP loans. I just talked to a business owner today that went through Cabbage. Brian, do we know if those fintech companies are still involved in PPP?
I do not know. I don't know officially. I know I got a call yesterday from a gentleman who said he spoke with Cabbage and they are not currently taking applications. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if they will. I don't know if they're allowed to. I don't know if they won't, even if they are allowed to. I'm not really sure. I can only provide you with that little bit of feedback I got yesterday, but I have not heard anything about the fintechs.
Okay, great. And again, if you go to sba.gov/lender match. So I know Andrew answered PPP lender match, but go to sba.gov/lender match to find that lender. We have a question: can businesses which opened in October of 2020 apply for this PPP?
So you have to have been in business prior to February 15th to be eligible.
That's the magic date, February 15th, okay, of 2020, great. Kelly says, what is the time period for the 25% reduction in gross receipts? 2019 or 2020 or a subset of that? Do you want to reiterate that, Brian?
Yeah, so you can do either one. You can use your full over 2020 over 2019 full year, or you can choose whatever quarter or that you'd want to compare to show that 25%. So if you wanted to just, instead of doing the annual 25% year over year 2020 to 2019, you could compare, first quarter of 2020 to first quarter of 2019, or second quarter of 2020 to second quarter of 2019, third quarter to third quarter, fourth quarter to fourth quarter. So you can choose those comparisons, but it has to be an apples to apples comparison, and you can't choose first quarter of 2020 compared to fourth quarter of 2019. It has to be first quarter to first quarter, second quarter to second quarter, et cetera.
Got it. And let's remind people that that's for people who have 300 or less employees, correct?
Correct. 300 employees or less for the second draw, 500 for the first draw.
Okay, great. If you're a first draw applicant in the NAICS code 72, is there any way to get the 3.5 times loan?
So yes and no. So you can't get it on the first draw. The 3.5 times is only for the second draw, but you would be eligible to get your first draw at 2.5 times, and then if you were able to use it prior to the expiration of the funds or March 31st, then you could apply at that point for your second draw, and then you could get the 3.5 times.
Okay, great. Any quarter in 2020 compared to the same quarter in 2019. That's correct, Andrew. Edna wants to know if your business uses only 1099 employees, can they apply for PPP? And I believe the answer is yes. You want to expound on that, Brian?
Yeah, so the business owner could apply on their own behalf. Any 1099 employees would have to apply on their own. So the business can't use 1099 employees in their calculation. So they could use themselves or any other employees that they have that are not 1099, but the 1099 folks are able to apply on their own.
Chanel asked us, if your business shows a loss on line 33 of your Schedule C, are you eligible for PPP?
You are not. So regarding that line, so basically what you do is you'd find your 2019 or 2020 1040, 1040C on line 31 is your net profit amount. If that amount is over 100,000, you got to reduce it to 100. because you can only have 100,000 per. And then if this amount is 0 or less, it's not eligible for PPP.
Okay, great. I'm still seeing what to do now in additional resources is, no, we're not showing anything different. These are, we're doing the Q&A and we don't have any other slides. So you're good. Christian says, hope you answer some of the questions. They are really important. Okay. We're trying. Are the 7A programs eligible for the new origination P&I waiver if the loan is being refinanced from one financial institution to another? 7A to a 7A being refinanced. Good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's an existing 7A loan. It doesn't matter to us who it's with. So if you have an existing or current 7A loan, then the Debt Relief Act would apply to it.
Okay, great. I have a borrower who took an EIDL loan in 2020 and now has a first lien on ABA by the SBA, but we did not know what would happen. How long does it take SBA to subordinate this situation?
Yeah, so I don't have like a standard timeline, obviously, because our volumes are high. So, you know, we don't have our standard, 3 or 4 day turnaround or whatever it is. Typically we'd have a number we could tell you. What I can tell you is we've had a bunch of these sent in, and the Disaster Service Center has been very responsive. So they've been processing these things in, a week or so. Now that was the last kind of one that I know of was a month or so ago. So it might be a tick higher now, but they're moving through those pretty quickly.
Hey, Rebecca, if you can see this slide, I'm the last person, Catherine.Gase@SBA.gov. Send me an email. I actually have a PowerPoint slide on contacting the disaster office. So it just might give you a little bit of information on what to tell the disaster office when you're asking for that subordination. So let's see. I want to make sure I get that. Okay. Nick says, please review the new EIDL program again, and where do you apply? I don't see it on SBA.gov PPP. No, go to SBA.gov, and at the top of that homepage, you'll see COVID relief in a sort of a mustard colored box. And from there, you can go to the EIDL program. Have they updated that yet, Brian? It changes nightly.
I'm not sure. I can tell you actually where to find it. If you go to SBA.gov/PPP, you're going to see at the top of the page, Paycheck Protection Program. Right there underneath it on the left, you're going to see first draw PPP loans, second draw PPP loans. And right underneath it, it says SBA also offers additional coronavirus relief. If you click on coronavirus relief, it's going to take you to EIDL. So I don't, it's kind of buried it a little. I'm not sure why, but you can find it right there. You just click on that coronavirus relief.
Okay, perfect. So go to SBA.gov PPP, then on the left-hand side, go to coronavirus relief.
Yep.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you. Elena or someone has posted the website. Thank you. Awesome. Rebecca, thank you. In 2020, Schedule C required or is sufficient to submit the 2019 Schedule C if 2020 is not yet prepared.
Yep, so for your payroll calculations, you can use 2019 or 2020.
Okay. Let's see. Mark says, if we did not take all of the approved EIDL funds, can we reapply to get unused funds?
So yes, it's a little different process than what we talked about on PPP. So EIDL's obviously a separate program. So what you can do is you were approved for a certain amount. If you didn't take all those, so you have $150,000 in eligibility basically. So say you got 60 or whatever, 50 for easy math. So you got 50,000. You can apply for reconsideration to gain access to that 100,000 you have left. They're still going to have to review it. They'll still look at it and underwrite it. You're going to have to explain to them why the original amount wasn't enough to get you covered for 6 months, or why you need additional funds. But yes, you are able to do that. You would email PDC, Papa Delta Charlie, reconsiderations at SBA.gov, and put in the subject line increase. And then put a little write-up in there about, you got your loan, give them your loan number, put in there that you are requesting additional funds and the reasons why. you know, if you're a restaurant, you've been shut down for a few months, whatever the case may be, just explain why you need the additional funds, and then they will get that and start going through the process again.
And Mark, send me an email, catherine.gase@sba.gov, and I'm happy to send you, again, a little PowerPoint slide that just gives you that information that Brian just said. Thanks, Brian, that was helpful. Okay, so we have another question. We got this through email. Elena says, what exactly is the latest, greatest final process? Oops, just popped down. For requesting forgiveness of the Paycheck Protection Loan I received every time I have called my bank. They have sent a check back later because they did not get, or they haven't received guidance. They also say that I should receive a packet of information soon, which I have not seen yet.
Yeah, so I don't think you're going to get a packet of information. I'm not sure what that's about. So it's like, you know, I'm not quite sure what they're talking about, but we're not sending out packets of information that I'm aware of. But I'm going to guess what happened here. So essentially, so first off, it's important to know that banks are, just because we have opened the forgiveness window doesn't mean they have to start accepting them yet. So banks are independent, credit unions are independent to make that decision on their own on when they're going to accept forgiveness applications. My guess is what happened is a lot of banks and credit unions were waiting to accept applications, forgiveness applications, because they knew we've been talking about this new one-page forgiveness form that was probably going to come out. That was probably going to be for some sort of reduced dollar amount. So there was a lot of talk, but nothing had really happened. So a lot of banks were waiting to see what was going to happen with that, because it's a heck of a lot less of a logistical lift if we were going to, you know, give full forgiveness for, you know, something under $50,000 or something like that, or it's a heck of a lot less of a lift if it's just a one-page document. So they didn't have any of that information other than they were hearing that we were going to release something like that. So unless you talk to them today, that's probably the answer you got. But that we have released, I think we released it yesterday or maybe the day before. I don't know, they're all blending together at this point. But we did release that one-page forgiveness application. We did release the dollar amount. So for $150,000 or less, you will have a one-page application to submit. That application has since been posted on our website, again, at SBA.gov PPP, so it's out there. I think it got posted yesterday. So my guess is you probably talked to them prior to yesterday, or even maybe yesterday, but today it's up. So I don't think you're going to have those same issues now. I'd reach back out to your lender and see what they're going to do now that they basically have all the information.
And to sort of complicate things even further, I've also heard from customers that their lending institution has contracted out with different entities to do the forgiveness part. So there may be a delay in terms of that communication from the lending institution, the contractor, you know, the service provider. So, you know, it gets complicated. We understand. It can be frustrating. We have another question on EIDL. Business owner marked the wrong box and was not awarded a grant, but a loan. I was told that the switch was going to be made, but the funds ran out. The funds did run out. And as Brian said, we are still awaiting guidance to determine whether we're retroactively going back and instituting those grants, or, you know, we're giving out new grants. So to be determined. Brian, you want anything to add?
No, I mean, that's about right. We don't, like I said, we don't have a lot of information on how that EIDL grant's going to be facilitated here moving forward. So I can't answer your question. What I can do is tell you that you can call the disaster customer service kind of hotline we have set up. They might be able to answer that question for you. Sometimes they have that info before it trickles down to the field, but I don't think they do. But it's worth a call. It's 800-659-2955.
Great. Elena, it looks like that's all of our questions. Oh, we have one new message. I spoke too early. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Elena. She posted the number of the disaster hotline. I'll repeat it for those of you that have called in, 800-659-2955. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to you. I'll turn it over to you, Elena.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate so much, Kathy and Brian, everything that you guys are doing. We know it has been a very difficult year, and we thought it was hard to keep up. I can't even imagine how you guys felt trying to keep up with everything. And I know there's more to come. We're not done yet, right?
Right.
So we appreciate you guys so much. I also wanted to give a little shout out to Robin Daniels, who's on the call. She's with Senator Gary Peters' office. And I just wanted to also say, you know, kudos to Senator Peters, Robin, and all the staff there. They were also extremely helpful to us. During all of this, we're always there to answer questions and to listen to what we needed. And of course, one of the big things, for those of you who might not know, chambers of commerce were excluded from being eligible for the PPP in the first round. So any entity that was a 501c6, that would include Rotary clubs as well, if you're part of your local Rotary, were ineligible. And we advocated, of course, very heavily with Senator Peters and then with our U.S. Representative Alyssa Slotkin to make chambers eligible for the PPP, and they listened. And as you just heard, we are included in the second round. So we really appreciate all of their work for that. And then I just want to give one last shout out. I know he's not on the call because he's not with the SBA anymore, but Rob Scott, who was our Region V Administrator, he was a political appointee, so he was officially done yesterday, probably, or maybe the day before, I don't know. But Rob was extremely helpful as well. I had an opportunity to meet with him personally. That was coordinated by, again, our U.S. Representative, Alyssa Slotkin, and he was absolutely phenomenal as well in working with businesses and helping us get information that we needed. So just last shout out to Rob, even though he is from Ohio. You can tell him. You can tell him I said that, Kathy, because, you know, he loved to.
Yes, he did. I did. I will tell him. And our parting gift to him, he was phenomenal. He was the best regional administrator that I've worked for in my 33 years. But we gave him a Michigan mug and a Beat Ohio pin as his going away gift. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Oh, that's wonderful. And, you know, it was just a great example of reaching across the aisle, so to speak, and working together. You know, he did a really good job of that, and so did Congresswoman Slotkin. So we really appreciate it. So with that, that is the end of our presentation today. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We're here for you. You all know that. If you have any questions or anything we can help with, call your local Chamber of Commerce. This is what we do. And like I said before, together, we're going to get through this, and we're going to come out stronger and better than ever. So everybody have a great day.